The competitive 40K network presents Art of War.
Art of War.
Strategy and tactics. Discussions with the best players on the planet. Now your host, Nick Nanavati.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Art of War 40K podcast. I'm your host, Nick Nanavati, and this week we are joined by a very, very special guest, Folger Pyles from Ohio. How are you doing, Folger?
I am doing great, Nick. Thanks for having me as always.
Yeah, thanks for coming on the show again. For those of you who don't know Folger, he's actually a monster on the 40K scene. He's actually the World Champion of Warhammer as crowned at the WCW last year in 2024, and his journey has not stopped since then. He's joined Team America, got into the Academy, and recently played for our country over in England at the Home Nations tournament, which was the first time we've ever been invited to participate there. Folger was the highest scoring player of our team and the second highest scoring player of the event with Adeptus Custodes. Folger, that's a pretty damn impressive run, I'm not going to lie. So we're here to basically unpack that, talk about his journey with Team America, his year since World Championships of Warhammer, and talk about his Adeptus Custodes list and how it works. It's featuring that brand new shiny detachment, Lions of the Emperor. Then in part two of our two-part episode, we're going to talk about the actual games Folger played at Home Nations. Over across the Great Pond, Folger played against some of literally the best players in the world representing their own countries, so you're not going to get better games than that to dissect. We're going to go through play-by-plays and figure out exactly how Folger dominated such a field of competition. You can subscribe right now on patreon.com/AOW40K. Gets you access to this episode's part 2, along with 280 other part 2s. You also get access to our Discord server where you can talk to Folger directly, myself, or any of the other Art of War coaches. You really can't get enough value out of this. But enough about all that. Let's just jump right into it. Folger, how have you been? How are you doing?
I'm doing great, Nick. It's always a good time to play 40K, especially with a team that I felt the vibes were immaculate with, and had a great time. So
that's awesome. The team vibes were spectacular at Home Nations. I was really excited to be playing alongside you there. Tell me about your journey since we last talked. We talked about in like November after you won the World Championships. What have you been doing in Warhammer since then?
So this has been kind of a year where I've switched my focus more to team-oriented 40K. My personal team and org from Ohio, we've been going to more team events as well as training up different players so we can field a good roster and everything. As well as personally, every second of my time has been pretty much dedicated to Team USA stuff and failing miserably at learning how to use TTS efficiently.
Right. So talk to me about that process a little. I mean, Team America, it's a bit of a shrouded mystery for a lot of the players who aren't aware of how they get on the team or, once you're on the team, what does that even look like? What is being on the National Warhammer team for America to you, and what is that process?
So it's kind of a two-part question there. So as far as it goes to me, it's pretty freaking cool. It's something that I didn't think I wanted to do. And then I watched WTC last year with all the streams and stuff that was going on there. And I was like, oh man, I do want to do this. So then I started looking into the process of like how to do it and what all goes into it. It's pretty straightforward. I think it's September or October, I want to say. Pretty much it's open season. You're allowed to sign up. There's a couple of different qualifications or like references, I guess, that you have to have. And then you'll see if you make it into the Academy. The Academy is a new thing that Team USA has been doing, which I think is a super cool process, just kind of getting more and more people into top level teams 40K. There's 16 different, basically prospects that are all kind of competing against each other at the same time of helping each other get better, shooting for those few spots on the starting roster. And then you also get to go to cool team events across the pond and represent your country. So it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, man, it sounds awesome. And when I was applying for the team and all that my first few times, it was never so formal with the Academy process and all that. So it's cool to see it evolve throughout the years. Have you found that it's made you a better Warhammer player?
I would say yes. I don't think I'd say it has to be yes. I've played more games in the last, 5 or 6 months now, than I did anywhere probably all of last year combined. So just in terms of reps alone, and it's especially reps against like the best players in your country, it's definitely the best place that I could possibly get those reps. So I've definitely just improved upon and learned way more than I would at an accelerated pace just by going through it.
Talk to me about what you've learned for Teams Warhammer. I know you were mainly a singles player prior to joining Team America and kind of getting exposed to all this stuff.
Yeah, so Teams is a little bit different, both in concept and in terms of gameplay on the table. So because of the complexity of the pairing process and being able to pick boards and things, it skews matchups higher and lower. So maybe like in a singles environment, you'll play a bad matchup, but it's not that bad because you're on like a neutral board. But in teams, you can end up with a bad matchup on a bad board, and then it becomes a terrible matchup, right? So just learning things about that as the kind of like the minutia of teams, both with pairings and then gameplay. The gameplay part of it, where you're not just playing to win by one, you are playing to basically hit your matrix. What I mean by that is there's this tool that every team uses where they try and like gauge matchups and say this army versus this army, this is the expected result. And your goal is to practice that matchup, understand that matchup, and then hit or higher than your matrix like suggests that you should. It's a whole process. It's been a lot of fun learning from some of the best players.
When you're doing your matrixing, Folger, are you estimating what your score is likely to be, or like kind of optimistically, like I think I can get a big win here, or is it very conservative in approach? What's your process for matrixing? You could walk us through.
So personally, and if I can speak for some of the other people on Team USA, what we think is probably the best way to do it is that you matrix conservatively rather than what you think you can get. Which the last thing you want to do in a team setting is have a flip where a matchup that maybe you think you'll win by a little bit turns into a big loss. That's just how you would lose a round as a team, not just yourself. So matrix with, hey, what happens if my dice are below average and some things go crazy and it's like I don't pick the board or whatever it is, right? You want to matrix in such a way that you're hedging your bet, and just as long as you can do that and still hit your matrix, you'll have a lot more team success than otherwise.
Aside from like playing reps against every army, you might have to matrix something against an army you have very little experience on or against, or there's a new detachment for a new army that's just come out or something. How do you go about figuring out what your matrix score should be into this kind of unknown army that you're running into?
So this has been kind of the coolest part of Team USA, which we're basically just a massive, we're basically crowdsourcing data and information for teams. So new detachment comes out, you've got 30, 40 people in a Discord. One or two of them are going to be faction specialists that know exactly what this goes to and how that applies to every other army. And then you can use them as a reference. Maybe you play a game, you talk to them for a little bit, and then that'll give you such a better perspective of the new army or the matchup or anything like that than you could from maybe 5 reps of just playing it into random people.
Yeah, especially because the people at your fingertips are kind of exactly what you said, faction specialists. Like these are the people who are playing the tons of reps and they're really high quality reps and they understand it on like a deep level.
100%.
Nice. Makes a lot of sense. And then from there, you just kind of use the new information to give it your best guess.
Yep.
So talk to me about your army list and your preparation for home nations. You kind of have been playing a lot of different factions throughout the year, right? I've seen you on Eldar doing very well at Adepticon with the Inari. I know you were playing some Aspect Hosts, but for home nations, you switched it up and took it back to your roots with Custodes. What's going on there?
So kind of old reliable. I think from a team perspective, I think me playing Custodes was going to be better for the team overall. I think I'm pretty good at that game plan, and I think having players that are faction specialists or that have unique skills or abilities in your team roster, you should really embrace that rather than just say, "Hey, go play the meta army." It normally is going to end up better when you play what you know and what you're good at. As
Right.
far as like specifically my like roster construction and practice, I played a whole bunch of games. A new detachment came out, so I was testing at the same time the new detachment came out. We also got like some different nerfs and things at the same time. So I was really trying to figure out what would be the best version of Custodes that I could put on the table. What we ended up settling on was the new detachment, which amplifies your damage more than any other Custodes detachment by a lot, but still playing kind of the bread and butter durability based units that just also now have way more damage output. And then a cool tech choice that I'm sure we'll talk about in later in this episode or
Yeah, I'm excited to hear it. So can you just read off the list you took to Home Nations, kind of top to bottom?
Yeah, absolutely. So the detachment is Lions of the Emperor. Pretty much stay away from your other units, get +1 to hit and wound. Cool detachment roll. So running through this, you got 2 Blade Champions, and then you have Valerian. He's the like AOC in combat captain kind of guy. And then you have a shield captain on Dawneagle Jetbike, and he has the enhancement on Admonimortis. It's a pretty cool damage enhancements. It makes him 10-3-3 with 6 attacks and lance. So he hits super hard. Then we go down here to our bread and butter, our 2 Caladius Grav-tanks and our 15 Wardens. Not the first time I've put this on the table. Will probably not be the last either. It's just very, very solid. Kind of does it all. So we got 2 units of prosecutors. There's just little cheap trash. That's OC2. It's really efficient for what it does. It holds points, takes up space, does secondaries. And then we have 2 Virtus Praetors. These are the bikes that go with the captain. They kind of pair together to be a super cool unit that does way more than it probably should. And we got a unit of Witch Seekers, which have Scout and have Flamers, which also benefit from the +1 to wound. So they can spike and go really hard into targets that you normally wouldn't think so.
Okay. So kind of like on the offset, your Custodes, normal 18 Warden, good stuff list. But then
Yes.
obviously we switched attachments. We don't have a reactive move anymore. Instead, we're a little more damage dealing, like you said. I think the real kind of head scratcher here is the big bike unit. I know Custodes players generally hate the bikes. And then Folger, I think you've told me you hate the bikes. And here you are running the bikes. What's going on here?
Yeah, I hate the bikes. So it's a little complicated. If there is a one Custodes bike hater left in the world, it's me. I think they're still probably overcosted, but in this detachment specifically, it unlocks a couple things, and it's a really, really cool piece that adds a whole other layer to an otherwise pretty static army. So just to run through kind of the abilities of what they do here. So this is how they kind of pair up. So the shield captain has a really, really good, like actually insane ability. It's once per battle. Into the fight phase, if you have fought, you can make a normal move or you can fall back. He also gives you like a free strat, like all the captain characters do. But in Lions specifically, you have a enhancement or a strat to re-rack it, so you can twice per battle into the fight phase move. And that's also relevantly not the end of your fight phase, it's the end of the fight phase. So your opponent has to play super careful. Like the nightmare scenario of they charge you, you heroic with this unit, it then moves, and then you go to your turn, moves again and charges, is like very, very scary.
Oh, wow.
So yeah. So it's basically you get a huge amount of movement out of this out of nowhere. And the other thing it does really well is it fights and fades. So if normally Custodes really struggle with getting baited out by like a medium strength unit walking to the center, and then you have no real answer for it except for like hitting it in the face with wardens, and then your wardens are in the open to get shot and charged and everything. What the bike unit does really well, which no other unit in Custodes does, is gets hit or it gets to hit its target and then not get hit back. So you charge in with the bikes, you kill something, you move 12 inches backwards behind terrain. So having the ability to play hyper aggressive with them, where you run them in, you charge something, you dive deep into their lines, or if you play a more conservative game and you just fight and fade them for the first 2 turns and then come out on turn 3 with everybody, it's been really, really nice to have. To the point that I'm playing it over Draxus, which should tell you how much I've enjoyed having that piece in my army.
Yeah, I mean, that was Draxus not being here was going to be another one of my questions, but I want to talk about these bikes a little bit more. So it sounds like a very multi-purpose use unit for you. It's a great action starter, not like literally actions, but I mean, your opponent puts something on the middle. Now you have something that can go answer it and then run back behind the wall, kind of fight and fading, as you had mentioned. Or you can use it aggressively on a go turn to like reposition further up the table and threaten like enemy home fields and stuff. It kind of gives you a dynamic piece. And then you also have rapid ingress, I imagine, to kind of complicate the board state further.
100%. Depends a little bit on the matchups, whether you rapid ingress a Warden squad or not, but it's just a lot of pressure. And in the matchups where you don't need, like you're afraid of getting run over and they just run at you, you start all three on the board. In every other matchup, forcing your opponent and asking them the question, hey, I could have Wardens 9 inches from you at any time. What are you going to do about it? Is a huge problem. And it forces people to screen, which lets you pick up all of their chaff and things pretty early. And then as soon as you've done that, which the bikes do help with early game, then you're hitting juicier targets with your Wardens, which just you actually now just get to punch through in Lions. Sometimes you'd have kind of relying on wounding on 5s in the other detachments. But in Lions, like you walk up to the monolith and you're wounding it on 4s. Feels pretty good.
Yeah, absolutely. And I suppose with +1 to hit and +1 to wound from your Lions of the Emperor detachment rule, you pretty much don't have like the normal struggles of not killing vehicles that Custodes sometimes deal with. Is there any profiles like you still struggle with?
There is one profile. There is, unfortunately, the Custodes still have the -1 damage problem, where anything that's where damage to the army pretty much across the board. So anything -1 damage is a huge wall to try to get through. Besides that specific ability, almost everything else you just punch through cleanly now. Lions answers most of your other problems.
So with Custodes, I know you had big scores throughout the entire tournament. Obviously, you were our highest playing scorer on the team. How do you balance kind of playing conservatively, not taking risks, being good teams at Warhammer, while also getting huge scores?
So that is kind of the tightrope act, and it's a little bit to do with how I like to play 40K and how I've been trying to train myself to play 40K. So the train myself part of that is matrix over everything. And once you've talked about matchups like we've talked about, it's more important to lock down your matrix over anything else you can do in a team event. Even like if you can take 0 risks in a game and score like the 12 you said you'd score, that's awesome. That's like best possible scenario. Now, how I like to play 40K is I tend to be, let's call it a little bit aggro, and I like to control the tempo of the game and be the aggressor. Even with Eldar or pretty much any army I put on the table, that's my style of play and just how I enjoy playing and have had success. So kind of balancing those two with Custodes has been really fun and really rewarding, both in results and enjoyment. I think what Lions has let me do and what I've like kind of evolved my game to be, it lets you do the kind of like all-in turn, and you're basically playing the first turns 1, 2, and 3, always looking for the all-in turn and how your opponent can play around that, or if they don't, how you can exploit that. So that's how I turned. Obviously, I scored a whole bunch of differential points. Most of those matchups were yellow or small wins, which means like kind of drawish. They can go my way, maybe go my opponent's, or I should win by a little bit. But being able to just like break games loose, I've been really looking to kind of exploit that, and worked out well for me.
So you basically have this kind of stalemated conservative position where like you're on your side of the board doing your thing, holding 2 objectives, and then you're trying to really mess the game up from its flow by rapid ingressing a squad and having your bikes get aggressive and kind of move advanced charge your other blade champ units out. So then all said and done, you have these like 4 powerhouse units in your opponent's face. And they basically are in a stat check position where they have to kind of get through it all. Otherwise, you're going to hurt them very badly. And because they typically, you can orchestrate this to your liking, and then they typically fail that stat check. That's how you get those huge wins. How do you handle the oopsies I rolled bad there? Like, at the end of the day, 4 pinballs, 4 feeling pain. That's great. That's really great. But some armies activate in multiple phases, or they can like slow you down to not have to deal with the stat check all at once. Then your army is just living and dying by the fours. And in such a low model count that rolling bad is really traumatic sometimes. And then there's mortal wounds and stuff. How do you factor for that?
Short answer is experience, and very painful experience of just getting absolutely crushed by those things, to know when to watch out for them. The main thing is you're kind of applying the Eldar mindset of the safest way that I can not die is by not rolling saves, and you try to apply that in the same principle of how few saves can I roll with my Custodes, right? So you want to be kind of sectioning off pieces of the board where it's harder for them to activate all of their units into one unit cleanly, where they kind of have to split it up. And just looking for those lines and taking advantage of them is the best way that I've found to kind of make this kind of game plan work.
Well, what does that look like a little more practically, if you can describe it? Like if you're pressing onto your opponent's side, I imagine it's not going to be too difficult for them to like bring their guns and their combat to bear upon you. How do you limit that when you're pressing them?
Oh, of course. So there's a couple things you're looking for. Other thing the bikes can do, which this did come up in one of my games, is they can move block, which is obviously not something you think of doing with your 300-point Custodes unit. But I'm a big fan of move blocks, so I always look for there if they've got like a tank or something that has to go through like the edge of a wall or something to tow out to shoot me, and I can block that off. Great, then that tank doesn't get to activate. But the main thing that you're going to be looking for is just activation equity. So activation equity is kind of the concept of if I have like a transport and guys in it and you have one activation, that's my objective. And you kind of take that to the Custodes thing, which is it requires 3 to 5 activations to probably chew through this unit. How do I limit that so you only get 2 or 3 activations at most into me? So you're going to be using terrain to the best of your ability to kind of cut sight lines. In Lions, you also have a reactive move after you get shot, which leans into this even more. And then when it comes to combat, you also want to kind of layer your feel no pains. So maybe one side of the board, they only have combat units, and you go aggressively, you kill all the shooting on that side so that they only have combat units. Well, then your feel no pain is just going to be in the combat phase. And then maybe on the other side of the board, you do the reverse, or you just look for like small kind of like technical plays like that, where you're limiting their activations, limiting their profiles into you, and then kind of tipping the scales so the stat check's a little more in your favor.
That makes a lot of sense. So basically, just trying to gain a lot of small advantage throughout the shooting phase to kind of make your damage flop a little bit more. And because you have that 4 pinball, 4 feeling pain, like a little inefficiency goes a long way there. And then, of course, like you said, just not getting hit is kind of plan A, wherever you can pull it off.
Yep, absolutely.
If you are listening to this, it probably means you play Warhammer 40k. And if you're playing Warhammer, you know you need a lot of dice. Baron of Dice is where we get our dice from. They produce amazing different kinds of dice. We just recently got all kinds of different faction dice shipped to us, which we use on our stream games. But not only do they look really cool, but they're highly customizable. You can get different symbols, corners that are square, corners that are round, different shapes and sizes, different sided dice. It's all the rage. And they're customizable in color and design as well. They are so cool looking. Not only that, but they feel great to roll in your hands. I've never held dice that roll and feel this good. Not only that, but they are scientifically perfectly balanced. There are tons of case studies on people rolling thousands of dice and recording all the results that they get. And sometimes you might get a die that rolls just a few too many ones. We've all had to throw it out before. These dice are not like that. They are perfectly balanced to a T, thousands of rolls, perfect distribution. If you want to take your Warhammer game seriously and make sure the dice are not screwing you over, get some Baron of dice.
How do you play secondaries and primary with this army? Like, you don't have that many units, and you're doing jobs of screening and scoring and killing. How does it all work?
Yeah, so obviously scoring is the name of the game, both for differential and for winning the game in general. I think a really key thing with Custodes is that you, even when you're running in with your 4 units, your other 5 units have to play the game very well. So what I mean by that is you have 3 units of sisters and tanks. What you want to be doing is you want to be using those to score points and they can be normally kind of in the open behind your wardens and behind your bikes and stuff. Even if they could get shot, most people are not going to shoot the 40-point sister unit behind you when there's a warden unit about to come punch you in the face. So what you want to do is kind of use the sisters to take up space and hold objectives. Once you go for your big push turn, your tanks move up onto like your like kind of no man's land objectives. So that way you're scoring those points while the stat check is happening. So then they're all focused on killing you, and you're just racking up a huge point total at the same time. The other thing is the sisters are key to the point that I'm playing a Witch Seeker specifically, and it's why I'm playing Valerian. He just happens to be 10 points cheaper than a Blade Champion, even though I do think the third Blade Champion or even Trajan would be better. I just really value that one Witch Seeker. It lets you have a unit that can go area denial, cleanse the middle, secure no man's land on turn one. You don't feel bad about losing it, and you don't have to commit a real unit.
That's because the Witch Seeker's scout.
Yep, they have Scout 6.
Makes sense. So you really value the scout more highly than you do like a Blade Champ or a Trajan, like you're saying, like these really awesome characters that I see almost in every single Custodes list.
Yes, I am big on scoring points, and I think the Witch Seeker like really gotta have one Witch Seeker.
No, this sounds super obvious. Just as you take the sisters to score points, right? But like, let's break that down just a little bit further. And I'm saying this because I recently played against a Custodes opponent, and they maybe didn't deploy optimally. I think they had a very similar list to what you're playing, Folger. They just didn't have the bike. That they did have the bikes. I think this might have been your list, and they definitely deployed wrong, right? So they drew area denial turn one, and they couldn't score it. And then I felt like they were kind of not scoring with their sisters the way they need to. Where do you put your stuff generally when you deploy it?
Okay, so there are assigned seats in this. Yeah, that's the best way I can describe it. When you're playing, 9 units, you kind of have to have some set roles. So you have every single unit in this army has a designated role, and it has to do that role for you to work. Like just you have to do it. So we have 2 prosecutors. One of them is going to stand on your home field and look really good doing it for 5 turns in the game, and you're going to be happy about it because it's 40 points. You don't have to worry about it. The second prosecutor, I'll normally put on my kind of where I'm oriented, my left-hand side of the board. That's normally like where my natural expansion is, closer to the edge. And then normally in such a way where it can walk forward, do a containment on turn one, kind of do an action, take up space, something like that. So that's the second prosecutor, kind of on the farther left or flank. And then the one Witch Seeker is going to go towards the center. And it's always going to have that option of it can be in the open, so it could scout backwards behind terrain to be safe if I go second. Or if I go first and I get area denial, like you said, I have a unit that can actually score that, not feel bad about scoring that, and then die. The other thing is, if Witch Seekers go to the middle, score air denial, and then they try to run at you with trash, you can overwatch them with +1 to win flamers. And then it draws more resources out. So those are the assigned seats on those sisters that are going to be scoring.
Now, how much are you prioritizing safety over like role playing here? Meaning like if you can't deploy to get to the expansion objective unless you're in the open on turn one, are you favoring safety over distance?
So yes is the short answer. Because you only have 9 units, you definitely can't lose them top of 1 for free. The prosecutor squad, normally there's a little hidey hole somewhere, and even if it's a little unoptimal, you're going to be fine. You have the movement with both your tanks and your bikes that you can normally get to your natural pretty easily, or with an advance on your wardens to try to get there.
I know you mentioned also you reserve a warden unit for rapid ingress. Are you reserving anything else?
It's only time I'll reserve anything else is going to be like sometimes if they have some indirect, I might reserve an extra unit of prosecutors, and just like to have that resource to then come on and then walk onto my home field later, just so I'm holding that, just because you really cannot afford to not hold your home field, but you also can't afford to play the game without your 6 bricks or 4 bricks and 2 tanks, I should say.
Right. So you're never reserving a tank, really?
I don't think so, because they control lanes so well. that you just want to apply that pressure from the get-go. I definitely have reserved a tank in the past. I just think it's a little terrain dependent.
That's fair. That's fair. I can totally see that. So what about primary? I know you mentioned you have these 4 bricks you're trying to dominate primary with, and the backfield is, of course, these sisters. But like, you don't have that many guys, like, while they are OC3 each, that's a lot. It's not horribly feasible for them to get out OC'd on an objective, like 10 dudes, 10 guardsmen roll up and just dump 10 catechins on the objective. It's theirs now. How do you handle that and getting move blocked and kind of the trash style of Warhammer going at you?
So the trash kind of style of Warhammer can work really well into you. So you want to kind of limit its effectiveness. The bikes do help this because they have a flyover mortal ability, so they can kind of clear your move blocks a little bit. So that's another cool tech piece that the bikes add to your list. But in terms of like getting your primary contested and everything, like a small little like tech cool piece you can do is you can kind of ring the objective with your guys so that they can't land on the objective without touching you or being in combat with you, I should say. Right. So that can stop the free contest 10 catachan play. So that'll help. The main thing, though, is you don't want to kind of trickle your army to your opponent. And what I mean by that is you kind of want to go all or nothing. Honestly, Brian Seep really, I was just listening to him talk one of the days, and it was like really just picked up on it's okay to give your opponent a 10 on turn 1 or 2 or whatever. If they just score their natural for a turn, that's fine. It's not worth throwing away a 300 to 400 point unit to stop that when they can just direct their entire army at you. It's much better to just aggressively stage all of your army, not come out, and then on turns 2 or 3, hit them with everything and give them a 5 or a 0, depending on what the primary is. And that has like really, really helped me on Custodes, just like really ramp those scores up.
Yeah, I could totally see that. I mean, basically, I think a lot of players really overreact when they play an aggressive army like Custodes can be, and they, not even necessarily for primary, but like draw a secondary like storm hostile objective. I guess I got to send my Warden brick out to storm hostile objective. And, it can be worth it for a lot of points, but the tempo of the match is something that I think is really important. And exactly what you said, you can't be giving up a Warden brick for free like that. You have to be very deliberate with the resources. How do you know when it's the go turn? How do you identify?
So there's a couple ways that I guess things that I would look for if I'm a Custodes player. It'd be, can I go out there, deny lots of points, and not get killed back, or kill something critical? If I can check 2 of those 3 boxes where I'm going out and impacting the game in a major way, then we're going to go for it. And it needs to not just be in one place. It needs to be kind of in a 2 or 3. Because obviously if you're sending, 1,500 points of your army into the open, it's got to be worth it on the scoreboard. I had a lot of games at Worlds where I would be way down on material, where my opponent would have over 1,000 points left and I'm tabled, but I win on the scoreboard by 5, right? And I think looking for points over everything is going to be kind of like, I guess, your flashing light of you should probably go for this. If you have a play where on turns 2 or turn 3, you can kill 3 big resources and deny 10 primary and score 8 secondary, probably should go for that, right? You want a big tempo swing, and the kind of the way that like you're holding it, and then you slam the gas, hit them with everything.
Yeah, just like kind of that right moment to send it all, completely overwhelm them. Usually turn 2 or turn 3, I imagine.
Normally, yes. In some games, obviously this kind of is a matchup dependent thing. You kind of don't want to send it, and you make it your opponent's choice of, hey, I'm threatening to send it. Do you want to force me to do it? And a lot of people don't want to get hit in the face by 15 wardens and bikes. So in certain matchups, you kind of just have the standoff, and that's
right.
And that's okay.
How do you identify? Is it like shooting armies, you don't send it, or melee armies, or what is it?
It's not a specific archetype, which is kind of weird. So like some shooting armies are just like never going to get through you in enough time. And some melee armies aren't going to get through you. Some combined arms won't work. It's really dependent on what the list is. Like a specific one at Home Nations was the Death Guard kind of like hull spam list. That list with like I think it was like 5 Predators, Morty, PBCs. That list has the damage over turns and durability that I'm going to really struggle to survive if I get shot even 2 to 3 turns by that. So in that list, I really I want to limit his shooting phases as much as possible. And the best way to do that is make him skip them by him not shooting me.
Makes sense. So it's basically just like what armies can apply their damage into you at a rate that's actually going to kill you. And then you have to not press those and you have to identify like their damage check capability.
100%.
That checks out for such a durability based faction. One thing I find super impressive about your record with Custodes Folger is that they're never really the top dog when you pull out these big wins with them. I mean, at WCW, I don't think anyone was really thinking Custodes would win with it. And then here at Home Nations, most teams didn't even bring Custodes, and you're out here slamming points with them. What is it about Custodes and you that just like clicks? How do you kind of do that?
I don't know if I have a good answer for you, Nick. I don't know.
Dude, I ended up golden savant, dude.
Apparently, I happened to just buy them because I had store credit, and it felt like an army that was polar opposite to Eldar, and it's kind of helped me kind of like rediscover how I play 40K and get a brand new perspective on it. So I always thought I was like, oh, I'm this super safe technical player, but once I've started playing Custodes more, it's helped me actually on Eldar, kind of vice versa.
I was actually about to ask that as a follow-up, but do you think it's made you a worse Eldar player, your Custodes adventure?
No, I think it's good. I think it's made me better. I think me picking up the Eldar book for the first 5 games was a little rough. Bit of a difference between T6 3 wounds and T3 1 wound. I was like, oh yeah, I'll deploy here. I'll get shot by one thing. I'll be fine. And then like my models die, and I'm like, oh right, that's I'm T3 1 wound. But so between just like the growing pains of going like back and forth between factions, which you'll kind of have, I think playing maybe not try and army hop all the time, but army like have a rotation of them where you're working on all of them, but you also get the different perspectives from them. Really, really has helped me over the last year or so.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, I have one more question, Folger, before we head off to part 2, discuss your actual games. If you had one piece of advice for an aspiring Warhammer player looking to get better, what would it be?
It would be pick one faction and really, really work on just being the best you can be, and find some friends or some good players in your local area and play as much as you can.
That's an awesome piece of advice. Literally cannot agree with more. Folger, thanks so much for coming on the show. It's been a pleasure, as always, talking to you.
Thank you for having me, Nick.
Of course. And listeners, thank you so much for listening. We literally don't get to do the show without you, and it's amazing being able to provide this Warhammer content for you week in, week out. You can help support the show and catch part 2 of this episode by going to patreon.com/AOW40K. That's where we have all that good stuff, along with our Discord server, where you can talk to Folger and myself and the other Art of War coaches as well. Thanks so much for listening, everybody, and we'll catch you later.
Like what you just listened to? Check out Art of War Down Under and Art of War Unbroken on the competitive 40K network. TheArtofWar40K.com.